any writer, no matter how great or well known, or even little known, will tell you how hard it is to find a good story. They don't always come from the mind, the imagination. Sometimes we have to look outside of ourselves, outside of our home, and go on a journey just to find that perfect story. The story that reveals something about yourself that you didn't know was in there. Or maybe you did know and you were just too afraid to confront it. Back in the 1970s, there was a up-and-coming writer who was in search of such a story. He opened up his map, pointed randomly, and his finger landed on Boulder, Colorado. He and his wife drove up there October 30th, 1974, and the hotel, known and still known today as the Stanley, was shutting down for the season. He and his wife were the only two occupants checking in. They had the entire hotel to themselves. The writer would explore, walking down the long corridors, waiting for a story and characters to emerge before him. Sitting in the grand dining hall with just he and his wife, as the grand recording orchestra played on and echoed throughout the hotel. Later that night, the writer had awoken from a nightmare. It was of his son running for his life through those long corridors of the empty Stanley Hotel, chased by some unknown, unimaginable monster. The writer woke up in a sweat, got up, lit a cigarette, and stared out the window of the Rocky Mountains. By the time, the writer said, that his cigarette was finished, he had the bones of the story. The writer was Stephen King, and the story was The Shining. On today's episode, we'll be exploring the history of the legacy of the Overlook Hotel, The Shining book, the film, and of course, the next chapter, Dr. Sleep, which is hitting theaters this weekend. So, buckle up. I hope you got your bags packed, because we're taking a little trip deep into the multiverse. Hello everyone, and welcome back to the Multiverse. I'm your host Paul, joined with Angela.
Hello.
So today, in honor of the release of Dr. Sleep, we're kind of going over the history of Dr. Sleep and Shining, because I feel like you really can't, talk about Dr. Sleep without talking about The Shining.
I completely agree.
Awesome. I kind of wanted to dive into some of the history a little bit. So Stephen King, for those who don't know, he loves Maine. Huge fan of it. Almost all of his stories, not almost, but a good chunk of his stories are set somewhere in Maine.
And I just feel like a lot of his stories take place in the Northeast in general. But
you look at it, Derry, Maine. Shawshank State Prison is in Maine. You got Stand By Me. I actually had a whole kind of list of where Derry, Maine, Shawshank, the Hulu series Castle Rock is set in Maine.
Okay.
Kind of the Maine, New England area, Salem's Lot, Cary. So I think in the 70s, coming off of his Salem's Lot, Cary success, he wanted kind of like a new location, so to speak. So according to legend, he opened up an atlas, pointed randomly, and he landed on Boulder, Colorado. And so, he and his wife drove up. One snowy night, checked into the Stanley,
Which is interesting because the Stanley is very far away from Boulder.
Yeah. Well, I guess apparently,
Actually, no. Estes Park and Boulder are pretty.
I mean, we drove through Boulder to get
Yeah,
there.
you drive through Boulder to get there.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I don't know.
Well, I guess he was in Boulder, and I guess he was asking people for where's a good place to stay for like the weekend.
Yeah.
You know, and they went up to Estes Park, stayed at the Stanley, and apparently that they were kind of closing for the season. Only 2 occupants in the hotel. And so, yeah, I guess like when they were having dinner in the dining hall, their table was the only one set, and like all the other like chairs were on the table, and they just had like the recording of this like kind of old jazz orchestra playing and echoing. And
Yeah, that sounds pretty haunting, and I do like that idea if that's how it all pretty much went down. Because I mean, we've stayed at the Stanley a couple times now, and we did the tour, and they do mention Stephen King staying there and where his room was and stuff, and it is a historically haunted hotel, but it's not like one of like the heavy hitter haunted hotels. I think it's it's definitely in like the top 100, but definitely not in the top 20 haunted hotels. And I mean, I don't know. Did you feel like it was haunted when you stayed there?
no, I mean, as I've said, the only thing that haunted me there was the food.
Yeah, it was pretty foul. But the Stanley itself has gone through so many changes because it started off as like kind of a refuge for people who were suffering from tuberculosis.
Yeah.
And the higher altitude and the drier climate was really, really good for the lungs. And so, yeah, that's kind of how it started. And fun fact, there is a pet cemetery there.
That is true. But yeah, I'm blanking the guy's name, but Stanley, who kind of created that like steam engine car. I mean, that was his
The Stanley steamer.
Yeah, his hotel. So yeah, but my big takeaway from us staying there was buying a copy of The Shining and starting to read it while we were there, and there is no question that he is talking about that hotel.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I like hearing that, like the stories of like him just taking in that atmosphere again. Them being the only 2 in there. It's about to close for the winter. And again, legend goes that that night he had a dream about his son running through the hallway being chased by this unknown thing, and he said that he woke up, lit a cigarette, and was just kind of looking outside the window at the Rockies. And I always love this quote. He said that by the time his cigarette was done, he had the bones of the book.
Which, I mean, and you write, we dabble, but that's how quickly things can pretty much piece together if it just, the idea just runs itself.
Yeah.
But I mean, I don't know, like my love for the story, The Shining, doesn't necessarily stem from Stephen King, because I am not the biggest Stephen King fan. I think I read Carrie when I was freakishly like too young to be reading it, but I loved it. I loved that story, and it's a nice little like book. It's not the biggest read. But I loved it. And then I tried to read his other stuff, and it just like, I hated how he described things. And I think with The Shining, the book itself, because I had seen the Kubrick movie before I had even read the book, and I love horror movies. That's the thing. I love horror movies. And reading The Shining with you really made me understand like how depressing of a story I find it. Because you're really, I mean, I felt, maybe it's just because I'm an adult looking at it in like retrospect, but like reading it with you, it didn't seem like a story about a haunted hotel, a family stuck in a haunted hotel over the winter. To me, it was a story about a family stuck with an alcoholic that was about to fall off the wagon. That, and that is so terrifying. I mean, like domestic abuse, people who have grown up in those environments, like can testify with how terrifying that truly is. And so when we read that, I was more taken aback at just how depressing that really is.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I had read it before, and then I think reading it again as, slightly older, slightly more mature, I found myself liking it more. Like, to me, it felt just so much more honest, and I love that. I think for any great horror story, book or film, is that it's not so much about like the ghosts or the monsters. It's always the darkness that's already there, and how we choose to deal with that. Because the hotel, preys on Danny because he has this psychic power, the shine, and he shines brighter than most. That's kind of part of the premise of the book. And Danny almost kind of brings the hotel to life with his energy. Like the past becomes more vibrant and real because of Danny. Danny is ultimately able to reject the hotel, so it goes after Jack next, and Jack is just nowhere as strong as Danny, and he's already so vulnerable because he's only 5 months sober. One of the things that always got me was like, where the hell does the alcohol come from? Because they say in the beginning the hotel's dry.
Yeah.
So, I think the hotel is just kind of like,
give him the spiritual booze.
Well, yeah, I think it's just feeding into his desperation. And I will say that I feel like kind of in book versus film, which we'll get to in a little bit. I think Jack Torrance has more of a fleshed out arc in the book,
yes,
than he does in the movie.
Yes,
and that's like
and there are different iterations of a lot of Stephen King's works, and for me, I find that the films that my favorite Stephen King films are the ones that aren't really married to the books, like Carrie. Carrie is like, I know this is going to sound really fucked up, but I think it's going to sound more fucked up for the reader or for our listeners because you married me. And Carrie is one of those movies, like, if it's my ideal birthday is like just being at home watching Carrie. I freaking love that movie. I love that movie. But I also loved Stanley Kubrick's The Shining. All of the Stephen King, I feel like, books that were adapted for like miniseries or that are really like closer to the original material tend not to do as well cinematically. They just don't translate well at all. No. I mean, when we first started getting together, we watched the Shining miniseries together because it was hilarious.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Like, wow. Oh, I mean, it was fun, but we were more laughing at it than anything.
Yeah.
But when you think about, like, Kubrick's The Shining, on the other hand, like, I mean, say what you want about Kubrick, like, as a human being or as a director or whatever, that is a beautiful piece of cinema.
Oh, there's no
That
question.
film, I mean, Stephen King hated it, and you can totally see why he hated it, but that is just, it's a beautiful film.
Oh yeah.
And that when I think about the book The Shining, or whenever I think about the story, the first images in my head are the Kubrick renditions of that. Like, ugh, like, it's so good.
Oh yeah, no.
So good.
I mean that is a film.
Yes.
That is a film through and through.
Yes.
And it's interesting. So the book, The Shining, came out in 1977. And of course it's a big hit. And Warner Brothers had the film rights. And Kubrick, to my understanding, was actually in a bit of a funk before The Shining. The Barry Lyndon had just come out. Again, another great film. Not a big financial success, and so Kubrick was kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place where I need to make something that's going to be a commercial success, but also artistically fulfilling.
Yeah.
And so, with the 70s, kind of the horror genre is doing really well. And so there's a kind of a cool story about Kubrick's secretary that he had been given a pile of horror movie scripts. And he was just, you could hear him throwing them against the wall. Like, read a few pages, no.
Yeah.
And so there was a long pause for a while, meaning he had found something that he liked, and that was The Shining. So I think the kind of, again, going back to the bones of the book really stood out to Stanley Kubrick. And I guess at the time King had said, that he had kind of given him permission to kind of twist things, because it's like Mission Impossible to kind of try to translate a book into movie, because things aren't going to make it in the adaptation. I just don't think that King knew the degree in which that was going to be taking place.
Kubrick definitely gave him like a giant middle finger on the big screen when you see when Halloran is trying to get up to the hotel to save the day, and you see the car accident on the road,
right,
and it's the red bug. It's a red Volkswagen. Like, I mean, that is kind of a big, like, F you, I'm gonna do what I want. But, and as somebody, like, I hate the trope of just like, oh, the black guy always dies first. And I think that, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, feel free to write in, guys. I feel like The Shining was one of the earlier expressions of that trope, because Halloran comes in, and those people who read the book thought like, oh, he's gonna come in and like help, and it'll be great. But the first thing that happens is he gets like an axe in the back, and I think story-wise it's such a big like, oh shit, now what's gonna happen, right, for the audience who is familiar with the reading material, right. So it is kind of,
I mean, it's definitely a twist, because like you said, you're expecting for him to march in and save the day, and then when he's gone, because there's only 4 characters, and I guess Kubrick one of his big problems was there has to be casualty. Yeah, like we just can't. I mean, obviously, Jack was gonna go, but but there needed to be, I think, something else, and I love hearing the interviews with the screenwriters about how they had said that at one point Jack was going to die, but then the hotel takes over Dick Halloran, and so the big final act would be Danny versus Dick, because Dick Halloran, I mean, he worked at the hotel, so the hotel would have had more time to kind of slowly just kind of seep into his psyche, which that could have been a cool twist.
I'm glad they didn't, though.
Well, the other crazy thing, too, is that at one point, Danny was going to die. Danny was going to buy the farm, and I guess Kubrick liked the idea of there being, like, this, like, chalk outline of his body, but he just couldn't do it. He just couldn't kill a kid. Yeah.
That's
which
a
is...
rough thing.
That's a little too dark. I mean, I don't think anybody would have liked that. But one of the, I think, the big things that surprises, I think, people who read the book was that one of the casualties from the book that didn't make it to the movie was the actual hotel itself.
Yeah. But I mean, there are a lot of theories about it. There's that great documentary 237, where, because they changed the it's supposed to be 217, but he changed it to 237, and but it's a great documentary that you guys should totally know about. And watch, and some of the ideas are just stupid, but some of them are really, really interesting about how the hotel is fundamentally wrong. Like, the way certain hallways twist and turn, and then you're automatically on like the second floor, right. And like
the layout makes no sense.
It makes no sense, and it's supposed to, because you want the audience completely on their toes and confused, and I just that wasn't something I would have initially, like, just out of the gate watching this movie would have even noticed or thought of, but like, yes, it definitely resonates
Right.
in my bones about how like just disconcerting.
Yeah, and I love the kind of the flip of
was.
you have a maze outside of the building and like you know it's a maze, whereas the Shining or sorry, the Overlook Hotel being so deceptive, you don't know you're in a maze when you're in there.
Yeah. Yeah.
That was
And
really
just
cool.
like the color palettes that he used with certain areas of the hotel is just to me, I don't know, like I just thought it was so unique and dated, but like I don't know the best way to describe it. Like
I mean, it's kind of a time capsule.
it is a time capsule, but there's nothing else like it.
Yeah.
Like yeah, like if you think about like Wes Anderson, you look at Wes Anderson movies and like, you know, it's just kind of like this big like homage to like 70s like
Yeah.
Architecture or the love of Art Deco in the 70s, like, but that's like what he's focused on, and you have these everything symmetrical, everything super super symmetrical. But you can kind of like watching a Wes Anderson movie and seeing that layout, like I could totally say, oh yeah, Kubrick, The Shining, that totally that were the things where everything's symmetrical and things like that. Like, but as far as The Shining goes in that film, the Kubrick film, like you can't really pinpoint anything before that to like for him getting that inspiration from. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no.
Like it's its own like world. It's its own
Yeah.
universe, and I just think that's really really great. Unlike the mini series, which is the biggest like timestamp of like
90s.
late 90s like sad.
Yeah. 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 And you know, and that kind of came about because of how you know, Hurt King was by the Kubrick film.
Seriously butthurt by that film.
Which, you know, but I mean, and again, I'm a fan of both. Like I love the book, I love the movie. And you know, and I think that, you know, Kubrick hits a lot of the right notes from the book as far as kind of the themes and everything, but there are some things that when I read King's criticism of the movie, I get it.
Yeah.
Like, you know, and then I think his classic burn was that it's a Cadillac without an engine. It looks nice, but it's not actually running on anything.
I disagree.
Well, I mean, I think the big thing is, you know, again, going back to, you know, Jack Torrance, I mean, he has no arc in that movie.
Yeah.
He doesn't even have a moment of redemption like he does in the book. Like, in the book, you know, Jack is the reason why his family is able to escape, because he has a moment where he can shrug off the Overlook's power. And the other thing in the book, too, is that the boiler in the book is kind of like Chekhov's gun, where it's introduced in the first act, it's going to go off in the third. It's the reason why the hotel burns down. So you have this kind of you've a better kind of beginning, middle, and end for Jack Torrance in the book. And I think, you know, Wendy in the movie I don't think she's fully realized, you know, and
I thought Wendy was more fully realized in the movie than she was in the book.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah, I felt like Wendy. So, one of the big reasons why I'm not the biggest fan of Stephen King is he is notorious for the men writing women poorly. And I mean, I felt like Wendy, there was much more of a focus on her in the film than there was in the book. In the book, I felt like she was just kind of this background character that was just like, oh, well, and kind of doing things that like mom should do, but there was no personality there. In the film version of it, I mean, you definitely get this anxious, this hyper anxious, hyper, just stimulated kind of human being that is just like trying to do the right thing, but at the same time, I mean, she is the walking example of what like domestic abuse like can do to a woman.
Yeah.
And I just found that I found it, I could connect with that more than I could with Wendy in the book.
Yeah.
Wendy in the book just seemed like a shell of a human being to me. If I don't know, I mean that's my take on it.
I mean I love Shelley Duvall, but I mean she's just kind of just seems there to just look concerned, you know.
Yeah, no, I felt
like there's
more with Shelley Duvall's portrayal of Wendy than I did actually reading the character and the thought process of Wendy in the book.
Yeah.
I didn't feel anything with her. She just, there was no personality whatsoever versus like this Wendy, I don't know. I felt like there was a more human connection too. But maybe we can talk about that later.
Yeah.
I don't know.
But I mean, but bottom line is that that there was that just King wasn't happy with what Kubrick had done, and even The Shining, when it came out, was met with mixed reviews. And it wasn't until years later that it really kind of got the recognition that it deserved. I mean, it was only in 2018 where the Library of Congress decided to add it to its collection of. Let me just try to cause I don't want to mess up the wording, but it was said that it was 2018, the film was selected for preservation in the United States National Film Registry by the Library of Congress as being culturally, historically, or aesthetically significant. I would say The Shining checks all three of those boxes.
Absolutely.
So, but yeah, I mean, there is a big disconnect between the book and the movie. I think while I think it's able to achieve the narrative themes that King was presenting, I mean, again, Dick lives in the book, dies in the movie. The hotel blows up in the book, the hotel survives the movie. On the one hand, again, it's a visual medium, and it does kind of create this sense of unease that while they're able to escape, the hotel still stands, the haunting continues, and you have that fantastic last shot of, Jack Nicholson being in the crowd, like 1927.
Yeah.
So, and I like that you kind of, as far as the movie goes, you never really know what the hell's going on. Like, is it, is this, all because of Jack? Is it all because of Danny? Are the ghosts real or are they not? There's even a cool theory about The Shining, the film being a revenge story where it's like Danny's power lashing out against his father. So if you get the chance, read that online. It's really interesting. One of the things that you had touched on, I wanted to go back to briefly, was the documentary Room 237. I like where it really talked about the themes of colonialism.
Oh yeah.
And I think there's a lot of truth to that, because there's this line that I think just sort of comes out of nowhere. It's the famous scene where Jack's with Lloyd getting his drink, and right before he drinks it, he says, "White man's burden, Lloyd, white man's burden."
Yeah.
And it's like, where the fuck did that line come from? Like and then but then when you kind of hear the theory, because there's also a line in the beginning where Ullman is giving the family a tour of the Overlook. And there's a throwaway line, it's also built on an ancient native Indian burial ground.
Yeah.
And so I think that there's something to be said for, I think, and again, all theory, but I like this theory because it has that line, makes so much more sense, that it's sort of like the burden of the sins of past generations.
Yeah.
So, which... part of the reason I want to bring up is because I feel like kind of paying for the sins of past generations is kind of what fuels Dr. Sleep.
Yes.
And
beautiful segue.
Thank you. I tried.
You're so good at that. You should have a podcast.
So, I think I want to say it might have been like 2010 or 2011. King had said that he had announced that he was going to do like a poll, whether it was going to be like another Dark Tower novel or a sequel to the Shining, and they kind of tallied up these online polls and a sequel to The Shining one, which I was amazed by when I found that out because
Shit. Yeah, I didn't even know that.
well, The Shining was just so good that I just felt that it didn't deserve a sequel. The Dark Tower was already a series, like he had built this world. There are so many other stories you could tell from that universe. It's like, why touch The Shining again? As somebody who's a fan of the book, I figured just it's good as is, and it sort of I was worried about it being like a money grab, and then when it came out in 2013, I found myself at a Target, and I picked up like the first few pages, or sorry, I picked up the book and read the first 30 pages, standing in the aisle, and I was immediately hooked. And the copy we have still has that Target sticker on there. Because one of the things I really enjoyed about Dr. Sleep was that it's not trying to be The Shining.
No, it's its own like story, but you're getting this continuation because you want to know like what happened to Danny, what happened to his mom, what happened to Dick.
Yeah,
because what happened to all those guys like after that. Well, how do you live after something like that?
Because there's no way you could walk away with no physical or mental scars. And it's, and again, it deals with the themes of alcoholism and sort of like kind of becoming the thing that you were afraid of becoming, because Danny grows up in the shadow of this abusive alcoholic father, and Danny becomes an abusive alcoholic. Like getting into bar fights, just almost looking for that fight. It's just the start of that journey is so different because this is somebody who has this ability that he can't turn off, and so he turns to self-medication as a way of kind of drowning out that, not only The Shining, but just the experiences of the Overlook.
Yeah.
And I think that alone is just such a cool idea. And it's not, and I don't even think Dr. Sleep is like, for me, it's more like a work of like science fiction than it is like a horror story. I don't know.
I could definitely.
It's not a ghost story the way The Shining is.
No, it's something different. That, and you get this. You're introduced to this whole new, I guess, creature, baddie, monster.
Right.
The idea of the True Knot, which are basically like. I want to, yes, they're psychic vampires, basically. Yeah. But like not like the cooler version than what we would know as psychic vampires is just being that guy in the office that just drains you because he won't stop talking. Yeah,
right. No, the True Knot, I feel like if vampires existed, I feel like the True Knot, I feel like is kind of more grounded in reality.
Yeah.
Like I love that they're just touring the country. And they're like feeding off of people's steam. I think that's how they phrase it. But especially of those who shine. Like they get the best tasting stuff. And what I love about the book is that at one point, Danny hits rock bottom. And so to kind of climb out of that, he has to shine again. Which kind of opens him up to not only the demons of his past, but the physical demons, that prey on people like him, and that's where we meet Abra, who's this little girl who can shine just as powerfully as he did, because I think as he got older, it's not as intense as it was when he was a boy, but it's like she had that level of shine that he did, and so I kind of love that in order for him to kind of like heal and move on, is that he has to confront what happened to him at the Overlook. And again, in the book, it's not standing anymore. It's like a campground.
Yeah.
Which is where the climax of the book takes place. And then, a couple of... Well, man, I'm trying to remember when they announced they were doing Dr. Sleep as a movie. Again, I got worried because is it just going to be a sequel? Like, are they going to do it as a movie where it doesn't acknowledge Kubrick? Like, was it going to be its own thing? And if they do acknowledge Kubrick, what are they going to do? Because,
I'm really, really happy with how this all turned out.
I am too, and that's kind of why...
I'm so happy with how this turned out.
And that's why I wanted to kind of talk about the history a bit, because Mike Flanagan, who, the mastermind behind the Haunting of Hill House Netflix series, he strikes this incredible balance of marrying Kubrick's universe of The Shining and Stephen King's, and sort of making it so that they can
coexist.
Yeah, it's incredible. And in the film, the climax is Danny literally going back to the physical location of the Overlook. And it's great, and it didn't feel like it was fan servicey. Like it felt it was the perfect progression for his resolution.
I was so happy. I was so happy with all of it. I mean, first and foremost, I was so happy that Abra was a little girl of color.
Yep.
Because there is something kind of going full circle. I know Stephen King loves his little white girls, but like there was something about going full circle about having, an older black man walk this little white boy into this world and kind of give him this guidance that he is the only person who can give this boy the guidance of what Shining is, and to have Danny turn around and do this for like a little black girl was just like, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I did like that Danny is in a position where he can kind of pass on what, Dick taught him.
Yeah, and Ewan McGregor, oh my god, I love him.
I was just gonna say that, like, I love that, like, Danny has become like a Shining Jedi master.
Yeah.
And that, and having it played by Ewan McGregor, who played Obi-Wan Kenobi, was great. And Ewan McGregor, I thought was fantastic in this. He does Wounded very well.
Good. He does everything really well. He's just a really underrated actor, and I thoroughly enjoy him.
Yes, he's fantastic. And I gotta say, Rebecca Ferguson as Rose the Hat, she was awesome.
Yeah, she was.
I thought she did menacing and charming
very well.
Like, I was definitely charmed by her.
Yeah. No, like, she was fabulous.
Yeah.
I was really happy with what they did in that, and I was just pleasantly surprised. But that marriage between the Kubrick film and the books was just seamless. It was seamless.
Yes. And I have to say that I even loved the, speaking of Dark Tower, the little Dark Tower reference of when Dick says that Ka is a wheel, and that was what was bringing him back to Danny when, he's encouraging him to, talk to the girl, and that, that Danny still has, like, a debt that needs to be paid. So I thought that was nice. And I also wanted to say, I don't think I can pronounce her name, but I think it's like Kylie Curran. She's the girl who plays Abra. She was fantastic as well.
Oh, yeah. On it.
Well, the other thing, too, that I was really kind of curious about with how they were going to tackle was, okay, so I like, because again, Dick's alive in the book, and I love that, like, Dick just keeps visiting Danny as a ghost, giving him the lessons about the box, where the box is, to kind of put the ghosts in. Because I love the idea of, like, the ghosts following Danny, that they're, like, that their starvation is so intense that they're able to just kind of travel how many thousands of miles from...
To find him.
Yeah, from Colorado to Florida. I thought that was...
the bathtub lady being the first.
And, that was cool. Ooh. Yeah, really well done. Really well done.
So crazy.
And I think the nice thing about Dr. Sleep is that you can kind of see this without having seen The Shining. I mean, I think you definitely should, but I think it definitely stands on its own. Where, like, okay, like this, like some pretty gnarly stuff happened to... this guy, and kind of coming to terms with...
It was funny when we were in the, like, this little confession time, when we were in the theater watching this movie, when he goes back to the hotel and everything, like, starts waking up and there's all these little nods. To me, it was like, I felt like watching the first Avengers movie when you see them all together and there's that, like, I was so freaking pumped. I was like, yeah, like, oh yeah, yeah. It just, I don't know. I love horror movies though. So this was done in just such
I mean, yeah, this was
a
definitely
classy way.
It was a homecoming.
It was a homecoming, and I
Yeah.
loved it.
Yeah.
I
No,
loved it.
and that's one of the things that I think is also I think probably apropos to be talking about this movie in the sort of cinematic climate that we're in right now, because I know like sequels and franchise films, especially Marvel films, are kind of taking a beating right now.
Yeah.
Like you have Francis Ford Coppola talking about how their Marvel movies are like despicable, and just kind of talking about, and like,
why?
well, I mean, I think the argument, I don't want to get too far off track, but basically is that
I need to know.
all of these sequels are sort of taking away screen time from other movies, kind of filling up like Cineplex, this, that, the other. I don't think Marvel is to blame for all of that, but part of the reason why I like these sequels or franchise films is that I don't believe in happy endings.
Yeah.
To coin a phrase from The Last Unicorn, there are no happy endings because nothing ever ends.
Mm-hmm.
And so, the idea of somebody riding off into the sunset, I always want to know, well, what happens later that night or the next day? How does the events of a movie affect this person moving forward? And so I like that we have this opportunity to see what happens to somebody like Danny all of these years
later.
Yeah. I mean, because I want to know, I mean, these characters, they still, shine on.
Yeah.
And so I think it's just so great that we have that opportunity to come back to it. And what I kind of find heartwarming, because I love this kind of shit, that Stephen King was like so happy with Dr. Sleep and how it incorporated the Kubrick film, that it has changed King's feelings about the Kubrick film.
Yay!
So, I mean, like it's sort of what Mike Flanagan did. It sort of kind of redeemed the movie for Stephen King, and I just think that's really sweet, because I kind of always grew up. Because I had a weird fascination with The Shining as a kid. And I think it was around, 97 is when the miniseries came out. And I remember watching it on TV, and my dad being like, oh, you got to see The Shining. Like Kubrick Shining. Yeah. I don't know why I was allowed to watch that.
It's okay. I saw Kubrick Shining before years before the miniseries. Yeah. So if the miniseries came out in 97, how old were we?
We would have been 11.
Yeah, so I easily saw it at 9.
Ugh.
I was way too young to be watching that shit, but I ate it up.
Yeah, I did too, and I was just like, oh, now I've gotta know more and read about the book, or read the book, and kind of growing up with. That kind of rivalry between King and Kubrick. And, I also even loved, that was my gateway to Kubrick, was The Shining. That was the first Kubrick film that I'd ever seen.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. I think yes.
Because I wouldn't have at 11 years old, I didn't have exposure to Clockwork Orange or Paths to Glory.
Yeah, so I saw the order that I saw was The Shining, then it was 2001. Actually, no. I think 2001 was the first one, and then it was The Shining, and then it was A Clockwork Orange.
Yeah.
All of which films I saw before the age of 12.
Ugh.
So.
Yikes. Yeah.
Thanks, Dad.
Huh. Yeah.
Parenting.
Yeah.
But that's, with kids born in the 80s, yeah. Your parents are boomers. That's just, we were the last latchkey generation.
I mean, I was watching RoboCop and Darkman and all that, so, I mean, I feel like The Shining, I don't think is nearly as violent as RoboCop.
Yeah, even I wasn't allowed to watch RoboCop.
Yeah.
I wasn't allowed to see that, but...
Yeah, I don't know. I just don't know.
But A Clockwork Orange, yeah, that was something that my parents actually did not. I will give them this. It wasn't they were not at fault for A Clockwork Orange. That goes to my sister.
Mm.
She was at fault for that and her shitty teenage friends.
Yikes.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was in the same weekend I saw Ninja Scroll, so it was like, yeah.
So now, as someone who loves the Kubrick film as much as you do, what were your thoughts on seeing the Kubrick film and then Doctor Sleep? Like, did it seem to you like it was like because as we're saying, The Shining is a masterpiece, not even of horror, but just of cinema in general.
Yeah.
So I can't imagine how daunting of a task that would be to do a sequel to Kubrick.
So what was great he didn't try to... You could tell that he wasn't trying to do another Shining. Like, he was trying to do Doctor Sleep. And
he wasn't trying to make Kubrick's Doctor Sleep.
Exactly. And he wasn't trying to, because I mean, at that point, I mean, you have to accept, like, going into something like this, you have to accept that it's not going to be better or even like hold a candle to the original. I think because maybe he like accepted that when he went into it, it was like just a really nice, like you said earlier, coming home, it was a really just nice nod, and there were little things in it that I was like, ooh, like, because I'm a dork, but yeah, so I don't know, I thought, oh yeah, he did things though where he was able to recreate moments like the maze. That was like, whoa, okay.
The maze was great. The hotel lobby, the rooms. I mean, there was a lot of attention to detail with the sets.
Was super attention to detail, and it did not go unnoticed.
Well, you know what I also liked too was that when they brought back characters from the movie, I liked that they looked close enough to, like, say, Shelley Duvall or Jack Nicholson or oh my God, Mr. Carruthers. There, I'm blanking on his like Scatman Crothers. Dick Halloran. Where I liked that it was close enough where you knew it was them, but it wasn't trying to do like. They weren't trying to do some fucking crazy CGI shit.
Yeah, no.
I liked
they just
that.
let it, like, because it
felt more like a movie to me because of that.
It did, and it felt more like, okay, this is what they really would have looked like, or like it felt more real.
Well, yeah, and I thought, God, that girl who played the young Shelley Duvall.
Oh my God.
God, she sounded like her.
It. Yeah, nailed it.
It was so good.
Nailed it. There were just you gotta put a big spoiler up on this episode.
Okay, spoiler alert.
Yeah, it's a little late now, but I mean, like, to start, because, yeah, we're giving away a lot of goodies, but, oh my God. Yeah, and Lloyd, like...
Oh, being now...
Yeah, I don't want to say it.
Okay, sure.
Because I just.
All right, so yeah, I feel we haven't really given away that many spoilers.
Yeah, but we given away some like the good stuff, and like I want people to.
Yeah, but I mean, like everything we've said is like in the trailer, like them going to the Overlook.
Not everything we've said has been there, so no, I disagree. So I wanna just tread a little.
Okay.
Delicately. In case people want to hear the episode and they're okay with like slight spoilers, but they don't want the whole fucking shebang ruined for them.
Right.
Like,
yeah.
And we can always revisit it, you know, once we have the boys on the episode. But I thoroughly enjoyed it.
I did too.
I'm very happy with it.
I thought it was so well done, and I thought that it was, great as far as kind of recapturing the atmosphere of what Kubrick had done with The Shining. And one thing I liked about this too was that, you know, the film is so like claustrophobic.
Yeah.
Whereas this it's so much more like open. Like you're getting other locations because of the true not like travels, Danny travels. Yeah.
I feel way more grounded in reality with this film than the Kubrick film. Yeah. But the Kubrick film purposely wanted to uproot you.
Well, yeah, you know, I think the Kubrick film is almost like a fairy tale in a way.
Yeah.
But I think you just ultimately will have to go and like see it for yourself. But we like highly recommend it because we were lucky enough to kind of get it advanced screening tickets for it. So like it opens today, or well, depending on when this podcast gets uploaded, probably on Friday. It's coming out this weekend. Definitely go check it out because we thought it was fantastic. So definitely check it out. As always, we appreciate the listeners for continuing to subscribe and to tune in. Please don't forget to drop us some love, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and as always, enjoy those issues.